What if I told you that the reason you and I will one day die is because of a cosmic joke? A prank played at the dawn of time by a creature who thought mortality would be funny. This isn't the plot of a science fiction film. This is one of the oldest stories in North America, and at its center is a being who is not a god, not a demon, but something far more unpredictable. He has been called the first worker, the old man, the imitator, but he is known best by a single name, Coyote. For thousands of years across hundreds of sovereign nations, his stories have been told around campfires, in ceremonial houses, and whispered to children. These aren't simple fables about a clever animal. They are a complex library of human psychology, philosophy, and survival, all wrapped in the fur of a desert predator. And they all point to a terrifying fundamental truth about the universe, that the force driving creation might not be order, but chaos itself. The question is, why was this character so important, so central to the worldview of an entire continent? What secret does the trickster Coyote hold about our world, and more importantly about ourselves? The answer has been hiding in plain sight, and by the end of this journey you will never look at the American landscape, or the nature of reality, the same way again. Forget everything you think you know. Forget the cartoon character chasing a roadrunner, a bumbling failure obsessed with Acme rockets. That is a pale, sterile shadow of the original. The real Coyote, the one who prowls through the vast collection of Native American oral traditions, is a figure of immense and terrifying power. He is a creator god who can mold the first humans from mud and place the stars in the sky. He is a culture hero who can steal fire from the heavens to give to humanity, saving them from an age of ice and darkness. He is a lecherous, greedy, and arrogant buffoon who is constantly undone by his own insatiable appetites, often ending up maimed, humiliated, or even killed, only to resurrect himself moments later, completely unharmed and having learned absolutely nothing. He is a hero and a villain, a genius and an idiot, a savior and a saboteur. He is every contradiction of human nature, amplified to a divine scale. And understanding him is not just about understanding mythology. It's about understanding a uniquely American way of seeing the world, one that existed for millennia before the United States was ever conceived. To grasp his nature, we must go back to a time before time, a world shrouded in cold and shadow. In a version of a story told by many peoples, including the Nez Perce, the world was new, but it was incomplete. The people, the first humans, huddled in misery, their world perpetually dark, their bodies freezing, their food eaten raw. They knew of fire, but it was not theirs to have. It was hoarded by the fearsome Skookums, powerful spirits who lived on the peak of a great mountain and guarded their fire jealously. No one dared to challenge them. No one except Coyote. Now, Coyote did not decide to steal fire out of pity for humanity. Coyote did it because he was Coyote. He was bored. He was hungry. And the idea of possessing something that belonged to someone else was simply irresistible. So he devised a plan. He knew he couldn't fight the Skookums, they were too strong. He had to trick them. He gathered his friends, the swiftest and strongest of the animal people. He placed Cougar at the base of the mountain, Fox a little further down the trail, Antelope on the plains, and so on, creating a great relay race of creatures stretching for miles. Then he began his ascent. As he approached the summit, he transformed himself into a handsome, charismatic stranger, dressed in fine deerskin, and simply walked into the Skookums' camp. They were immediately suspicious. But Coyote was a master of charm and flattery. He danced for them, he sang for them, he told them hilarious stories. He was so entertaining that the Skookums, who were not known for their sense of humor, began to laugh and lower their guard. As the night wore on, Coyote complained of the cold, inching ever closer to their precious fire. He saw his chance when the Skookums were distracted by one of his jokes. In a flash, he snatched a burning coal from the fire with his teeth and bolted down the mountain. The Skookums roared with fury, giving chase. They were unnaturally fast, their footsteps shaking the ground. But Coyote was faster. He ran like the wind, the burning coal searing his mouth. Just as the lead Skookum was about to grab his tail, Coyote reached the spot where he had placed Cougar. He spat the coal out, and Cougar, catching it in his own mouth, took off with incredible speed. The Skookums, shocked by this trick, pursued Cougar. But when they nearly caught him, he passed the coal to Fox. And Fox passed it to Antelope, and so on down the line of animals, each one carrying the flame for a stretch before passing it to the next. The fire was a blur of motion, A living spark passed from one hero to another, always just out of the skookum's reach. Finally, the coal reached the last animal in the chain, Frog. Frog swallowed the coal whole and dove into the river. The skookums, who hated water, could only stand on the bank, screaming in rage as their fire disappeared. On the other side, Frog spat the coal into a pile of dry wood, and for the first time humanity had fire. They had warmth. They had light. They had the means to cook their food and forge new tools. They were saved. And it was all thanks to Coyote the thief. This story is more than just a myth about the origin of fire. It's a blueprint for understanding the trickster's role in the cosmos. Notice, Coyote's motivations were not pure. He acted on impulse, on a whim. Yet, his selfish, chaotic act resulted in an immense benefit for all of humanity. This is the central paradox of the trickster. He operates outside the rules of good and evil, of right and wrong. He is a force of pure disruption. He shatters the status quo. In the story, the skookums represent a kind of stagnant, oppressive order. They hoard a vital resource, keeping the world in a state of static misery. Coyote, through his trickery and rebellion, breaks that order. He introduces change, and that change, while born from chaos, is ultimately creative. It allows for progress. It allows for life to flourish in new ways. This theme echoes across the continent. In a Karuk story, Coyote establishes the rules for salmon fishing, ensuring the people will always have food. In a Salishan story, he slays a series of powerful monsters that were terrorizing the world, making it safe for humans to inhabit. In these tales, he is a fixer, a shaper, an agent who makes the world more livable. But it's crucial to remember that for every story where he is a savior, there are 10 where he is a fool. He is the character who gets his eyes stolen by a bird after trying to learn to fly, who gets his fur burned off trying to cook a meal he stole, who is tricked and beaten by creatures far less intelligent than he is. He is the embodiment of failure as much as he is the embodiment of success. And this too is part of his lesson. He teaches that hubris leads to downfall, that greed leads to ruin, that shortcuts often lead to disaster. He makes every mistake so that we don't have to. His failures are a roadmap of what not to do, just as his successes are a testament to the power of unconventional thinking. But if he can be a hero who gives us the gift of fire, how can he also be the monster who curses us with mortality? The answer lies in his oldest and most dangerous role, the shaper of reality itself. And in that story, his gamble would change the human condition forever. In the time before time, the world was soft. The mountains were not yet stone, and the rivers hadn't yet decided on their final course. The laws of life and death were not yet written. They were merely suggestions, ideas being debated by the first people, the holy ones who were shaping creation. They imagined a perfect world, a world without endings. When someone grew old and their body tired, their spirit would simply take a short journey to the west and then, after a brief rest, return to the world of the living, fresh and new. There would be no grief, no loss, no final goodbyes. The circle would be unbroken forever. It was a beautiful, comforting idea, and Coyote, who was there listening, absolutely hated it. He sat at the edge of the council, listening to them design their perfect static paradise. He heard them speak of eternal life, of a world without tears. And he began to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a sharp, grating sound that cut through the harmony of their plans. The other creators turned to him, their faces a mixture of confusion and annoyance. "What is so funny, brother?" one of them asked. Coyote stood up, dust falling from his mangy coat. "You are building a cage," he said, his voice raspy. "You call it a paradise, but it's a pond with no outlet. A story with no end. Think about it. If no one ever leaves, where will the new ones go? The world will fill up. It will be crowded with the same faces, telling the same stories forever and ever. There will be no room for children, no reason for them. What is the value of a birth, if there is no death to make space for it?" He paced back and forth, his shadow dancing like a nervous flame. "And what is the value of a day, if you have an infinite number of them? You would all grow bored. You would stop cherishing the sunrise. You would stop marveling at your children's first steps. Why would you? You have forever to see it again. Love itself would lose its meaning. The warmth you feel for your family, the fire in your heart for your partner. Much of that fire is fueled by the cold knowledge that your time together is precious. It is finite. You are trying to erase the one thing that gives life its sharp, beautiful edge. You are trying to erase consequence." The holy ones were unsettled. His words were like stones thrown into a still pool, and the ripples were spreading. They saw a flicker of truth in his argument, but they were afraid of it. The idea of a final end was terrifying. "You speak of darkness, Trickster," the lead creator said. "We wish to build a world of light. We will not have this ending you speak of." And so they ignored him. They proceeded with their plan. They built a special medicine house, or in some tellings they designated a sacred cave, a portal to the spirit world. The rules were simple. When a person died, their spirit would travel to this place. Inside, they would be cleansed and renewed. But there was one critical law. The door must be left open. The path must remain clear. For 4 days, the spirit would rest, and then it would emerge, ready to live again. Soon the first person died. The community mourned, but their grief was tempered by hope. They knew their loved one was not gone forever. They watched the entrance to the spirit lodge, waiting. They could feel a presence gathering on the other side. A shifting of the air, a whisper on the wind. The spirit of the first person to die was preparing to return. A great silence fell over the world. This was the moment of truth. This would be the first turning of the great eternal wheel they had designed. Coyote watched from a nearby hill. He saw the hope on their faces. He saw their perfect, predictable, and ultimately meaningless world about to be born. And he knew he couldn't let it happen. He wasn't acting out of malice, not entirely. He was acting out of a deeper, more chaotic wisdom. He was the agent of reality, and reality has teeth. As the wind began to stir at the entrance of the lodge, signaling the spirit's return, Coyote scrambled down the hill. Some say he was carrying a great, heavy stone. Others say he simply slammed a door that had been carved for the purpose. In the Caddo tradition, a chief was returning from the spirit world when Coyote, disguised as a man, shut the door on him, saying, "Man is not to live forever." Whatever the method, the result was the same. With a deafening finality, the path was sealed. The wind died. The presence on the other side vanished. The connection between the worlds was severed forever. A cry of anguish rose from the people. It was a sound the world had never heard before. The sound of true loss. They turned on Coyote, their eyes blazing with the hatred born of the first ever broken heart. "What have you done?" they screamed. "You have doomed us. You have brought the end into the world." Coyote stood before them unflinching, the dust of his terrible deed still on his hands. "No," he said, his voice low and steady. "I have not brought you the end. I have brought you the beginning. Now, a mother's cry when her child is born will mean something. Now, the love between two people will be a desperate and beautiful miracle, a dance on the edge of a cliff. Now, you will have stories. You will have heroes because you will have challenges to overcome. You will have wisdom because you will have pain to learn from. I have not cursed you with death. I have blessed you with life, in all its terrible, glorious, and precious brevity." They didn't understand. In their grief, they couldn't see the gift hidden inside the horror. They drove him away. They cursed him to wander the earth alone, forever an outcast, forever hungry, a scavenger living on the edges of the world he had so brutally defined. And he accepted his fate. That was the price of his gamble. This story is one of Coyote's most important and most terrifying. He doesn't just introduce a new rule. He fundamentally alters the nature of existence. He takes a world of soft possibilities and hardens it into reality. He is the one who makes the ink permanent. Before this moment, a mistake could be unmade. A life could be returned. After Coyote rolls the stone, actions have permanent consequences. This is his greatest, most terrible gift to humanity. He is the father of finality. He forces us to confront the most difficult truth, that life is a one-way road. But in doing so, he gives that road its meaning. Every step becomes important. Every person you walk with becomes a treasure. The view along the way becomes breathtakingly beautiful precisely because you know you cannot travel it forever. Coyote didn't just decide that we would die. He decided that we would live. He looked at the bland, endless circle the creators had planned, and with one violent, decisive act, he straightened it into a line. A timeline. A story with a beginning, a middle, and a definite, meaningful end. But setting the ultimate boundary between life and death was only his first act of cosmic vandalism. The world was still full of creatures that were half-formed, powerful beings who were neither man nor animal, and the rules of society hadn't been created yet. The world needed more than just an end. It needed an order. And to create that order, Coyote would have to challenge monsters, outwit gods, and steal the very things that make us human. He would have to teach us how to survive in the harsh, beautiful world he had just made irreversible. And his next lesson would be taught with fire. In the cold, dark beginning, after the world was set in its ways, fire was a secret. It was a treasure kept by the powerful, a gift hoarded by selfish spirits who lived on the highest, most distant mountaintop. For the newly created people, the two legs, there was only the biting wind and the endless, shivering night. They huddled together in caves, their breath misting in the gloom, gnawing on raw roots and cold meat. They saw the stars, distant and cold, and the moon, which gave light but no warmth. But sometimes, on the peak of the highest mountain, they could see a tiny orange flicker, a star that danced and lived, and they wondered what this warmth could be. Coyote saw their misery. He watched them from the shadows, his sharp eyes taking in their chattering teeth and blue-tined skin, and he felt something. Was it pity? Perhaps. Was it a sense of responsibility for these fragile creatures he'd helped bring into the world? Maybe. Or was it just the unbearable itch of boredom? The tantalizing challenge of taking something that was so jealously guarded? With Coyote, the reasons are always tangled. But he made a decision. The people needed fire. And he, Coyote, would be the one to get it for them. He knew he couldn't do it alone. The fire beings on the mountain were powerful and cruel. Their magic was strong, and their senses were sharp. A direct assault was suicide. This needed cunning. It needed a plan. So Coyote traveled the land, calling a great council of the animals. He called upon the fastest, the strongest, the cleverest. First came Cougar, sleek and powerful, her muscles coiled like springs. "I can run like the wind on the plains," she said, her voice a low rumble. "But I cannot run forever." Then came Squirrel, his tail a bushy question mark, his eyes bright and alert. "I can leap from tree to tree," he chittered. "I am quick, and I know the secret paths of the forest." Then came Frog, his skin cool and damp, his eyes blinking slowly. "I am not fast on the land," he croaked, "but the water is my home. No one can catch me in the river." One by one they came, Fox with his silent tread, Bear with his immense strength, Antelope with her explosive speed. Coyote listened to them all, his head cocked, his mind weaving their strengths into a single audacious thread. He laid out the plan. It was not a battle, but a relay, a race against the gods. Each animal would have a part to play, a single desperate dash to carry the flame from one to the next, down the mountain and across the plains, all the way to the village of the shivering humans. It was a mad plan, a thief's dream, and only a trickster like Coyote could have conceived it. He chose to go first. The most dangerous part of the plan, the theft itself, had to be his. He trotted to the base of the great mountain and began to climb. He didn't use stealth. Instead, he made himself look pathetic. He rolled in the dust, matted his fur, and put a limp in his walk. He whimpered and shivered, making his way slowly up the path to the home of the fire beings. They saw him coming, of course. Two of them, with eyes like hot coals and skin like cracked obsidian, came out to block his path. "What do you want, you miserable dog?" one of them snarled. Coyote hunched his shoulders and whined. "Oh, great spirits!" he cried, his voice trembling. "I am old, and I am so very cold. The world below is frozen. I saw your beautiful warm light from afar. I don't wish to steal it. I only asked to lie by your fire for a moment, to warm my ancient bones before I die." The fire beings looked at each other. They were arrogant and proud. The idea that this wretched creature could be a threat was laughable. A moment of warmth would prove their power and generosity. "Very well," the other one grunted. "But just for a moment. And don't get too close." They led him inside their lodge. And there it was. A fire, more magnificent than anything Coyote had ever imagined. It blazed in the center of the room, a living column of red and gold, crackling and singing, throwing dancing shadows on the walls. Coyote lay down, pretending to soak in the warmth, but his eyes were darting, calculating. He watched the fire beings grow complacent, turning their backs to tell stories and laugh their booming laughs. This was his chance. With a speed that defied his pathetic disguise, Coyote lunged forward. He snatched a glowing red-hot piece of bark in his teeth and bolted out the door. For a second, the fire beings were stunned. Then a roar of fury shook the mountaintop. The chase was on. Coyote ran like he'd never run before, his paws barely touching the ground, the burning bark searing his mouth. But the fire beings were fast, their strides eating up the distance. Just as their scorching breath was on his neck, Coyote saw her. Cougar. He tossed the fiery bark to her, and she caught it, spinning away in a blur of tawny muscle. Cougar bounded down the mountainside, leaping over chasms and dodging boulders. But the fire beings were relentless. As her lungs began to burn, she saw the next link in the chain. Squirrel waiting in the branches of a pine tree. She threw the ember upwards. Squirrel caught it and scrambled high into the canopy. He leaped from branch to branch, a tiny fleeting star in the darkness. The fire beings howled in frustration, trying to follow below. One of them threw a magical bolt of energy that grazed Squirrel's back, singing his fur and making his tail curl up forever in the shape we see today. Wounded, Squirrel dropped the ember. But Fox was there, waiting silently on the forest floor. He caught it before it hit the ground and vanished into the undergrowth, a phantom of red fur and fire. He led the pursuers on a twisted, confusing path until he reached the edge of the plains and tossed the fire to Antelope. And so the great relay continued, the single spark of hope passed from one hero to the next, a desperate flight across the darkened land. Finally, the last runner, exhausted and spent, reached the bank of a wide, dark river. The human village was on the other side, but so were the fire beings, closing in fast. All seemed lost. But then a low croak came from the reeds. It was Frog. The runner tossed the ember towards him. Frog opened his mouth wide and swallowed the living coal. He dove deep into the cold water just as the fire beings reached the shore. They stopped, roaring in fury. Fire cannot cross water. They were defeated. On the far side, Frog crawled onto the muddy bank and spat out the coal. But the journey had taken its toll. It was no longer a blazing piece of bark, but a tiny fading red spark. The animals gathered around, their hearts sinking. After all that, had they failed? But Coyote, who had used his cunning to circle around and arrive ahead of them, trotted forward. He looked at the dying spark, and he looked at the wood on the ground. He knew the final secret. He took the spark and gently, carefully, he fed it into the dry heart of a piece of cottonwood. Then he took a harder piece of wood, a stick of willow, and showed the gathered people how to spin it, how to drill into the cottonwood, inviting the spark to return. He taught them patience. He taught them the motion. And slowly a wisp of smoke appeared. Then another. And then with a soft whoosh, a tiny flame was born. Coyote had not just brought fire. He had brought the knowledge of fire. He had planted its seed in the wood, so that humanity would never lose it again. He gave them warmth. He gave them cooked food. He gave them a weapon against the beasts of the night. He had pushed back the darkness, and in the center of their village, a bright new star now burned. But in giving them light, Coyote had also given them shadows. And he knew with a glint in his trickster's eye, that the world had just become a much, much more interesting place. And in this new world of light and shadow, Coyote's chest swelled with a pride as vast as the night sky he had just decorated. He wasn't just a creature of the earth anymore. He was a shaper of the heavens. He trotted with a new swagger, his tail held high, casting a long dancing shadow in the moonlight he had helped to create. Every whisper of the wind seemed to sing his name. Every rustle of the leaves applauded his cleverness. He was Coyote, the bringer of stars, the hero of the dark. And with this newfound ego, he began to believe he was invincible, that the world now operated by his rules alone. One day, as the sun warmed the high plains, Coyote was trotting along a ridge, admiring how the light caught the colors of his fur. He was composing a new song in his head, a song all about his own magnificence. It was then that he saw it, a great, ancient rock sitting alone on the prairie. It was enormous, larger than any buffalo, and covered in green and gray moss that spoke of countless seasons of silent patience. It was a thing of immense power, a piece of the world's original bone. Any other creature would have passed it with a sense of reverence, a quiet respect for its age and solidity. But Coyote, puffed up with his recent cosmic success, saw only a big, dumb stone. He trotted right up to it and snickered. "Hello, old stone," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You just sit here all day while I, the great Coyote, rearrange the sky. It must be terribly boring to be you." The rock, of course, said nothing. It simply sat, absorbing the sun's heat. Coyote circled it, prodding it with his nose. "You know," he continued, "you look cold. Even on a warm day you look chilly. I feel sorry for you." In a grand gesture of false generosity, Coyote shrugged off the beautiful, colorful blanket he was wearing, a prize he had tricked from a sleeping chieftain just a week before. He draped it carefully over the great rock. "There," he declared, "a gift from the magnificent Coyote. Don't say I never do anything for the little people." And with a flick of his tail, he trotted off, immensely pleased with his own magnanimity. But a few miles down the path, the wind picked up and a sudden chill ran through the air. Coyote shivered. His beautiful fur was warm, but it wasn't as warm as that thick, woven blanket. He started to think about it. The colors, the softness. And what was that stupid rock doing with it? Just sitting on it. It couldn't appreciate the craftsmanship. It couldn't feel the warmth. It was a waste. The more he thought about it, the more annoyed he became. That was his blanket. He had earned it through his superior intellect. "That rock has no right," he muttered to himself, his pace slowing. "It's just a rock." He stopped, turned, and started trotting back. His self-serving logic was flawless in his own mind. "It's not a gift if the receiver can't appreciate it. It's just storage. I'm just taking it back from storage." He arrived back at the ridge, the sun now lower in the sky. He walked up to the silent stone. "I've been thinking," he announced, as if in formal negotiation. "That blanket is too nice for you. You won't appreciate it. I'm taking it back." He snatched the blanket from the rock, wrapped it snugly around his shoulders, and turned to leave without a second glance. He hadn't gone more than 20 paces when he heard a noise, a low, grating, rumbling sound. He paused, his ears twitching. He looked back. The great rock was no longer sitting still. It was trembling, shaking off centuries of dust. And then, with a deep groan that seemed to come from the center of the earth, it began to roll. Slowly at first, then faster and faster, right down the hill directly toward him. Coyote's smugness evaporated in a flash of pure terror. He yelped and bolted. He was fast, the fastest runner on the plains, but the sound behind him was getting louder. A thunderous, crushing sound. He risked a glance over his shoulder. The rock was gaining on him, bounding over gullies and smashing through sagebrush, its mossy face looking like a grim, determined scowl. "Help!" he cried, his song of self-praise forgotten. He ran faster than he had ever run before, his paws barely touching the ground. He saw a herd of buffalo grazing in a valley below. "Brothers!" he screamed as he raced past them. "Help me! A rock is chasing me!" The lead bull looked up, chewed thoughtfully for a moment, and then turned to the others. "It's Coyote," the bull grunted. "He probably deserves it." And the herd went back to grazing, ignoring his panicked pleas. Coyote's heart hammered in his chest. The rock was so close now he could feel the ground shaking with each impact. It was a force of nature, an embodiment of the respect he had so casually discarded. He saw a family of bears digging for roots near a thicket of trees. "Grandfathers!" he shrieked, his voice cracking with fear. "Hide me! Please help me!" The mother bear looked at him, then at the enormous, thundering boulder closing in. She sniffed the air. "You're the one who promised us a share of your salmon and then ran off with the whole catch," she growled. "Settle your own accounts." And she herded her cubs into the woods. No one would help him. His tricks, his lies, his broken promises, they all came rolling back at him, embodied in this single furious stone. He was utterly alone, pursued by the consequences of his own character. His lungs burned, his legs ached. The rock was just yards behind him, its shadow swallowing him whole. He was going to be crushed. This was the end. In a final desperate act, he saw two tall, slender pine trees. He didn't even think. He dove between them, squeezing his body through the narrow gap. He heard a sound like the sky splitting apart. A cataclysmic crack echoed across the plains as the great rock, unable to stop its momentum, slammed into the two trees and shattered into 1,000 smaller pieces. Coyote lay on the ground, panting, his body trembling uncontrollably. He had survived. He slowly got to his feet, looking back at the field of broken stones. He had outsmarted it. Coyote was still the cleverest. A weak, shaky grin spread across his face. But as he tried to take a step, he realized he couldn't. He was stuck. He looked down. The force of his passage had squeezed him as thin as a piece of bark. He was completely flat. He was a coyote pancake, pinned to the earth, able to do nothing but blink his eyes and watch as ants began to explore the new flat landscape of his body. The sun set, and the stars he had placed in the sky began to glitter, looking down on him not as a hero, but as a fool. He had given the world light and shadow, but had failed to understand the most basic truth: that you cannot mock the ancient powers of the earth and expect to walk away unchanged. The world was indeed a more interesting place, but he was learning, in the most painfully flat way imaginable, that its most profound lessons were often reserved for those who believed they had nothing left to learn. And as the cold night settled in, all he could do was wait, hoping anyone would come along and peel him off the ground. The sun had long since abandoned the sky, leaving the world to the cold, silver judgment of the moon. For Coyote, each passing moment was an eternity of humiliation. The pitch, which had been pliable and warm under the afternoon sun, was now a rock-hard cage, cementing him to the earth. He had tried everything. He twisted until his muscles screamed, pulled until his fur felt like it was tearing from his skin, and howled curses at the silent stars until his throat was raw. But the ground held him fast, an unyielding partner in his shame. The night creatures, once his subjects to be terrorized or tricked, now went about their business, their scurrying and calls a symphony of indifference. He could hear the faint, high-pitched chirps of the very prairie dogs who had engineered his downfall, and in his mind, every chirp was a peal of laughter aimed directly at him. He was Coyote, the firstborn, the one who had arranged the stars, who had stolen fire, who had taught humans how to live. And here he was, bested by a community of glorified gophers and their silent, sticky baby. The absurdity of it was a poison, seeping into his spirit. He had been so sure of his own cleverness, so wrapped up in the brilliance of his plan to steal their winter stores, that he had never once considered that they might be clever too. He saw them as simple ingredients in his grand scheme, not as actors with their own will, their own ingenuity. That was his mistake. He saw the world as a stage for his own performance, and had forgotten that every other creature was playing a part as well. As dawn threatened to paint the eastern sky in shades of gray, a new sound reached his ears. Not the rustle of a snake or the hoot of an owl, but a deliberate, rhythmic scratching. A series of shadows detached themselves from the darkness, and he saw them. The prairie dogs. They weren't just a few scouts. It seemed their whole village had turned out to see the spectacle. They stood on their hind legs, their dark eyes gleaming in the pre-dawn light. A silent, furry jury assembled to witness his disgrace. At their head was an old, grizzled male, his whiskers white with age and his gaze sharp with an intelligence Coyote had fatally underestimated. The old prairie dog approached slowly, cautiously, circling the trapped Trickster. He sniffed at the pitch, at the matted fur, and then looked Coyote directly in the eye. There was no fear in that gaze, only a calm, calculating appraisal. Coyote, summoning the last shreds of his tattered dignity, tried to put on a show. He snarled, baring his teeth. He told the prairie dog that this was all part of a much larger, more complex plan. A clever ruse to test their village's defenses. He warned them that his brothers, the wolves and the bears, were just over the next rise, waiting for his signal to descend and wipe their burrows from the face of the earth. He blustered and threatened, his voice a desperate rasp. The old prairie dog simply listened, his head cocked to one side. When Coyote's threats finally sputtered into an exhausted silence, the old one spoke, his voice a series of quiet, deliberate chirps that Coyote understood as clearly as if they were spoken in his own tongue. He said they knew Coyote had no brothers waiting. They knew he was alone, and they knew he was stuck. They had watched him all afternoon and all night. They had listened to his curses and his pleas to the uncaring sky. They were not impressed by his power because he had demonstrated none. They were only impressed by his foolishness. Shame, hot and sharp, pierced through Coyote's cold despair. For the first time he was truly powerless. His wit, his speed, his deceptions, all of it was useless. He was just a piece of fur and bone glued to the dirt. His tone changed. The bluster evaporated, replaced by a whine. He begged. He pleaded. He promised the prairie dogs anything they wanted. He would bring them the sweetest roots from the high mountains. He would divert a stream so it ran right past their door. He would stand guard over their village and protect them from eagles and snakes for a whole year. He laid his pride at their feet, hoping they would accept his offering and set him free. The old prairie dog conferred with his council, a flurry of squeaks and gestures. Coyote watched, his heart pounding with a desperate hope. He didn't care about the promises. He would break them the second he was free. He just needed to be free. Finally, the old one turned back. He said they did not want roots or rivers or protection. They knew Coyote's promises were as fleeting as the morning mist. They wanted something else, something he couldn't take back. They had seen how he strutted and preened, how he admired his own reflection in the water. They knew his greatest pride was not his cleverness, which had clearly failed him, but his vanity. Specifically, his big, beautiful bushy tail. It was a magnificent thing, thick and luxurious, tipped with black, a banner of wild arrogance that he flashed like a king's scepter. That, the prairie dog chirped, was their price. They would chew him free from the pitch, but they would keep his tail as a trophy, a permanent reminder to all who saw him that the small and the humble can bring down the proud and the mighty. The demand was so outrageous, so insulting, that for a moment Coyote's rage returned. His tail, it was his essence, his glory. To be without it would be to be incomplete. He would be a walking monument to his own failure. He refused, howling that he would rather rot here than suffer such an indignity. The old prairie dog simply shrugged. He and the others turned as if to leave, to let the rising sun bake Coyote into the hardpan for good. The first ray of sunlight touched the horizon, and Coyote felt the pitch begin to soften, its grip feeling even tighter, more suffocating. He imagined another full day trapped here, the sun beating down, the flies gathering, the buzzards circling. He saw himself, the great Coyote, becoming a feast for carrion birds, his bones picked clean and scattered by the wind, and he knew he couldn't do it. His survival instinct, the most ancient and powerful part of him, screamed louder than his vanity. He called out, his voice cracking. He agreed. He agreed to their terrible price. The prairie dogs returned, their expressions unreadable. There was no celebration, no gloating, just a quiet business-like purpose. They set to work with their sharp teeth, not on the pitch, but on the base of his glorious tail. The pain was immense, a searing, grinding agony that made him scream, but it was the sound of his own vanity being gnawed away that hurt the most. With a final sickening tear, he was free, and his tail was gone. He scrambled to his feet, dizzy and trembling. He glanced behind him and saw a raw, bald stump where his pride and joy had once been. The prairie dogs were already dragging their prize, his beautiful tail, toward their burrow, a flag of victory for the entire prairie to see. Coyote stood there, naked and diminished. The cool morning breeze felt alien and insulting on his exposed backside. He was free, but he had been fundamentally changed. The lesson he was supposed to learn was one of humility. He was supposed to understand that underestimating others was the surest path to ruin. But as he watched his tail disappear into the earth, another feeling began to smolder in the pit of his stomach, overriding any sense of humility. It was a cold, hard, patient fire. It wasn't the hunger for food or mischief. It was the hunger for revenge. He had lost his tail, but he had found a new purpose. He would make the prairie dogs pay. He would make the whole world pay for his humiliation. And he would start by becoming a trickster more cunning and more ruthless than he had ever been before. His rage was a physical thing, a hot stone in his belly where his breakfast should have been. The prairie dog's laughter echoed in the canyons of his memory, a sound sharper than any claw. Humiliation was a new kind of hunger, one that food could not satisfy. He looked at his backside, at the ridiculous hairless stump where his magnificent tail had once been. It was a brand, a mark of his failure. But to Coyote it was also a vow, promise written on his own body. He would not just be a trickster. He would become a living lesson in the anatomy of fear. He crept to the edge of the prairie dog town, his belly low to the ground. He watched them for days, his patience a thin, brittle thing stretched taut by his fury. He saw their rhythms, their routines. He saw the way they posted sentries, the way their heads would pop up from their burrows twitching, alert. And he saw what they feared most. Not the slinking shadow of a coyote on the ground, but the swift, dark shape that blotted out the sun. The hawk, the eagle, the winged death from above. An idea, slick and venomous, coiled in his mind. If they feared the sky, he would become the sky. He would not hunt them from the ground they knew so well. He would descend upon them as a judgment. The transformation was not a simple act of will. It was a messy, desperate piece of work. He scavenged for feathers, pulling them from the molting carcasses of crows and vultures, each one a dirty, tattered prayer to the air. He plastered them to his body with thick, black mud and sticky pine sap, creating a grotesque mosaic of brown fur and mismatched feathers. He lashed long, thin branches to his forelegs to mimic the span of great wings, and he sharpened a piece of flint, tying it to his snout to create a beak. He practiced the hawk's cry, but what came out was a strangled yelp, a pathetic mix of a bark and a squawk that sent squirrels scrambling up trees in confusion, not terror. He looked a fool, a monster made of mud and garbage. But in the dim light of dawn, perched on the highest cliff overlooking the prairie dog town, he hoped the silhouette would be enough. He waited, his makeshift wings trembling in the wind, the sap pulling at his fur, the flint beak digging into his nose. The sun rose, painting the prairie in gold, and one by one the prairie dogs emerged. They chirped and chattered, going about their morning business. The sentries took their posts. One of them looked up. It saw the strange shape on the cliff. It froze. It let out a sharp, questioning bark. Not a cry of alarm, but of curiosity. Heads popped up all across the town. A low murmur spread through the burrows. They weren't scattering. They weren't running for their lives. They were gathering, pointing their noses up at him, chattering amongst themselves. Coyote's heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't right. This wasn't fear. It was an audience. One brave prairie dog, younger and bolder than the rest, trotted a little closer to the base of the cliff, squinting up at him. "What are you?" it chirped. Coyote's rage boiled over. His plan was unraveling. His disguise, which had seemed so clever in his fury, now felt like the most foolish costume in all of creation. Impatience, the eternal flaw of the trickster, got the better of him. He forgot he was supposed to be a silent, winged predator. He opened his flint-tipped mouth and snarled down, "I am your doom." The words, distorted by the clumsy beak, came out as a gravelly gargle. The young prairie dog's head tilted, and then it started to chuckle. It was a small sound at first, a puff of air, but then another joined in, and another. Within moments, the entire prairie dog town was convulsing with a wave of laughter even more intense, even more humiliating than the one that had cost him his tail. They weren't just laughing at a trick. They were laughing at the sheer, pathetic absurdity of the trickster himself. They were laughing at the mud-caked, feather-dusted, branch-winged fool on the cliff. Something inside Coyote snapped. The hot stone of rage in his belly erupted into a volcano. The laughter was no longer just an insult. It was a physical assault. He was beyond tricks now. He was beyond cunning. All that was left was raw, destructive power. He forgot the prairie dogs as individuals. He saw only the source of the sound, the source of his shame, and he decided to silence it, forever. He scrambled back from the cliff edge, his fake wings catching and snapping on the rocks. He put his shoulder to a massive, precariously balanced boulder at the top of the ridge, a rock the size of a small hut that had rested there since the world was young. He pushed. He strained, his muscles screaming, his paws scrabbling for purchase. He wasn't just pushing a rock. He was pushing all of his humiliation, all of his fury, all of his failure into one titanic effort. With a groan that seemed to tear the mountain apart, the boulder shifted. It tilted. It scraped across the bedrock and then it fell. It didn't just roll. It crashed down the cliff face, dislodging other rocks, starting an avalanche of stone and dust. The world became a symphony of destruction. The thunder of the rockslide drowned out the laughter. It drowned out the panic squeals. It drowned out everything. The cascade of rock and earth didn't just hit the prairie dog town. It obliterated it. It plowed through the burrows, collapsing their intricate tunnels, burying the entire community under a mountain of rubble. The very shape of the land was changed. Where there had been a gentle slope leading to a flat prairie, there was now a deep, jagged scar. A canyon carved in an instant by pure, unadulterated rage. When the dust finally began to settle, silence reigned. A profound, deathly silence. Coyote stood at the top of the new cliff, panting, his ridiculous costume in tatters. He looked down at his work. The town was gone. The laughter was gone. He had won. But there was no triumph. There was no satisfaction. The hunger for revenge was still there, gnawing at him, but now it was mixed with a cold, hollow emptiness. He had unleashed a power he didn't fully understand. In his selfish quest to soothe his wounded pride, he had unmade a piece of the world. He had silenced the laughter, but he hadn't erased the memory of it. It was still there, echoing in the terrible silence he had created. This is a crucial turning point in the story of Coyote. He learned something profound that day. He learned that destruction is a form of creation. He had destroyed a community, but he had carved a new canyon. He had ended lives, but he had given the world a new feature, a new story written in stone. He saw that his personal pain, his ego, his pettiness, could have consequences that would outlast him, consequences that would literally shape the earth. He hadn't intended to be a creator, but his rage had made him one. He turned his back on the rubble and the silence. The loss of his tail had taught him humiliation. The slaughter of the prairie dogs had taught him power, a terrible, world-altering power. He was no longer just the fool who lost his tail. He was the force that could move mountains. And as he trotted away, a new, far more dangerous ambition began to smolder within him. If his petty anger could scar the face of the earth, what could he do if he aimed his tricks a little higher? What could he do if he decided to play a game not with prairie dogs, but with the stars themselves? His gaze lifted from the wounded earth to the vast, indifferent blanket of the night. The stars were scattered, thrown across the blackness like a careless farmer sowing seeds in a rocky field. There was no order, no story. It was a mess. And in that moment, Coyote didn't feel small beneath their ancient light. He felt insulted. He saw a canvas that was amateurishly painted, a song with no rhythm. And he knew, with the burning certainty that only the truly arrogant can possess, that he could do better. The game was no longer with the small creatures of the dirt and grass. The game was now with the very architecture of the universe. He would not just play in the world, he would design it. He began to travel, not looking for food or a mate, but for the highest point, the place where the sky stooped down to kiss the land. He journeyed for seasons, past canyons he had created in a fit of pique and over mountains he had raised out of sheer boredom. He was searching for the world's ladder. Finally he found it. A mountain so tall its peak was perpetually hidden in the clouds, a spire of granite that seemed to scratch at the belly of the heavens. He began to climb. It was not an easy climb. The winds tried to tear him from the rock, and the ice tried to freeze the ambition right out of his heart. But Coyote was driven by a vision. Every time he slipped, he remembered the chaotic, meaningless jumble of the night sky, and he would find a new hold. He was climbing to correct a cosmic mistake. He was climbing to fire the gods and take their job. After an eternity of effort, he pulled himself onto the summit, gasping in the thin, cold air. He was above the clouds, standing on a plateau that felt like the roof of the world. And here the stars were not distant sparks. They were close. They hung like glowing fruit from an invisible tree, pulsing with a soft internal light. They were within his reach. He found them kept in a great cosmic basket, woven from shadows and moonlight. The spirits who tended to them were old and slow, content with the way things had always been. Coyote, of course, would have none of that. He approached them not with force but with his sharpest weapon, his tongue. He didn't demand the stars, he criticized their placement. "What is this?" he asked, waving a paw at a random cluster of lights. "It looks like nothing. Tells no story." The people below look up and all they see is confusion. They need guidance. They need pictures. They need heroes and monsters written in fire for them to follow. The spirits mumbled and conferred. They had never thought of it that way. The stars were just there. Coyote pressed his advantage. "Let me show you," he said, his voice dripping with the false humility of a master salesman. "Just for one night, let me borrow your basket of lights. I will arrange them in a way that will make sense. I will create patterns that will last forever. The world will be better for it, and you can take all the credit." His words were like honey, and the old spirits, tired of their endless, monotonous task, agreed. They handed him the basket. It was heavier than he expected, humming with a power that made the fur on his neck stand up. For a moment, even Coyote felt a flicker of fear, a sense of the sacred responsibility he now held. But it passed, quickly replaced by the intoxicating thrill of his own genius. He set to work. He reached into the basket and pulled out a handful of the brightest stars. With the care of a master jeweler, he placed them one by one against the black velvet. He made a great bear, forever circling the northern point of the sky. He made a hunter with a shining belt and a sword, forever chasing the bear. He created a swooping eagle, a slithering serpent, a great canoe for celestial travelers. Below, the other animals gathered and watched in stunned silence. The night sky, once a random scattering of diamond dust, was becoming a tapestry of meaning. They could see the stories taking shape. They could see order emerging from chaos. And they saw that it was the work of Coyote. They began to murmur his name in awe. Coyote heard them. Down on the wind came the whispers of his own glory, and it was the sweetest music he had ever known. He worked faster, his ego swelling with every constellation he completed. He was not just a trickster. He was a creator, a god of the night. He was magnificent, but the basket was still very, very full. There were thousands, millions of stars left. The work was slow, placing each one perfectly, making sure the lines were just right. It was tedious. His initial burst of creative fire began to cool. His back ached. He got bored. His mind, which had been so focused on the cosmic scale, began to drift to more immediate concerns. He thought about the plump rabbit he had seen near the base of the mountain. He wondered if there were any berries growing on this high, lonely peak. He looked at his handiwork. The big, important pictures were done. The bear, the hunter, the eagle. Everyone would see those. They were his signature pieces. The rest of these little stars, they were just filler. Who would even notice? The praise from below had already started to fade as the audience grew accustomed to the spectacle. His grand project was becoming a chore. And in that moment of classic Coyote impatience, a new idea sparked in his mind. A shortcut, a grand finale. He grinned a wide, toothy grin. He had given them order. Now he would give them spectacle. He grabbed the great basket of stars with both paws, heaving its immense weight. He braced his feet on the edge of the world, and he began to swing it. Once, twice, he spun it around his head, a humming, glittering centrifuge of raw creation. The remaining stars swirled into a thick, glowing river of light inside the basket. With a mighty howl that echoed from the roof of the world to the bottom of the darkest canyon, he let go. He flung the rest of creation into the heavens. Not with care, not with a plan, but with a single glorious impulsive gesture. A vast shimmering trail of light ripped across the sky, a smear of divine paint thrown from a careless brush. Billions of stars, once waiting to be placed into careful stories, were now a chaotic, breathtakingly beautiful splash. He had created the Milky Way. He stood there, panting, admiring his work. Part meticulous design, part magnificent accident. It was perfect. It was him. A sky that was both brilliant and lazy. A universe that made sense right up until the point it gloriously didn't. He had fixed the heavens by making them more interesting, more unpredictable, more like himself. His work done, he scrambled back down the mountain, not waiting for thanks, already thinking about that rabbit. He left behind a permanent testament to his nature, written in fire across the night. A reminder for everyone who would ever look up. The universe is a place of profound order and breathtaking beauty, but it was shaped in part by a trickster who got bored with the details. And perhaps, just perhaps, it's the splash of chaos that makes the whole thing worth watching. But this cosmic meddler, this shaper of stars and spiller of light, didn't just stay in the heavens. The same chaotic energy that painted the Milky Way eventually turned its gaze downward, to a world that was new and cold and dark. And on that world were the first people, shivering, huddled together, without one of the most fundamental tools for survival, fire. In many traditions, this is where Coyote's role shifts from cosmic creator to something even more vital. The unlikely champion of humanity. The ultimate thief. The culture hero. Now, when we think of a figure who brings fire to mankind, we often think of the Greek titan Prometheus. A noble being who, out of love and pity for humanity, defied the gods and gifted them the flame of knowledge, suffering eternal punishment for his compassion. Coyote is not Prometheus. Coyote doesn't steal fire for humanity. Coyote steals fire for Coyote. The stories vary from nation to nation, from the Karuk to the Apache, but the core elements often rhyme. In the beginning, the world was gripped by a perpetual winter. The people and the animals were freezing, but fire existed. It was just hoarded, kept under lock and key by powerful selfish beings. Sometimes they're called the fire beings, or the skookums, jealous spirits living on a mountaintop who refuse to share their warmth. They dance and laugh around their crackling blaze while the rest of the world suffered. And Coyote? He was cold. He was miserable. His fur wasn't thick enough, his belly was empty, and he was tired of his teeth chattering. He saw the light on the mountain and his mind, ever the calculating machine of self-interest, began to spin. He didn't see a source of salvation for the world. He saw a personal furnace, and he decided he was going to take it. But he knew he couldn't do it alone. The fire beings were too fast, too powerful. So, he did what he does best. He organized a conspiracy. He went to the other animals, the ones who were also suffering. He went to the fleet-footed antelope, the powerful bear, the quick little squirrel, and the frog with the cold, wet mouth. He laid out a plan, not of heroic sacrifice, but of a brilliant, desperate heist. A relay race against the gods. He told them to station themselves all the way down the mountain, one after another, in a long line leading back to the people's camp. Then, under the cloak of darkness, Coyote crept up to the peak. He watched the fire beings singing and dancing, their shadows leaping in the joyful light. He waited for his moment. One of the beings, lazy from the heat, took a burning brand from the fire to light his pipe. As he did, a single glowing red coal fell to the ground. That was the chance. In a flash, Coyote darted from the shadows, snatched the searing coal in his teeth, and bolted down the mountain. The fire beings roared in fury and gave chase, their feet like thunder on the rocks. Coyote ran faster than he had ever run, the coal burning his mouth, but the thought of his own personal campfire drove him on. Just as the fiery spirits were about to catch him, he reached the first animal in the relay line, Bear. He spat the coal and Bear caught it, turning to charge down the path. The spirits, enraged, swiped at Bear, their fiery claws leaving permanent white marks on his fur. Bear, roaring in pain, tossed the coal to the next in line and the next. Each animal played its part. Squirrel caught the coal on his back, and it burned so hot it caused his tail to curl up forever into the shape we see today. The spirits were gaining. Finally, at the bottom of the mountain near the river, the last animal waited, Frog. The exhausted runner tossed the coal. Frog, with his wide mouth, swallowed it whole. The fire beings descended on him, but they could see nothing. In a panic, Frog leaped into the river and swam to the other side, hiding in the mud. The spirits, unable to cross the water, finally gave up, returning to their cold, dark mountain in defeat. When it was safe, Frog came out and spat the hot coal onto the bank, into the roots of a willow tree. The fire was now inside the wood. Coyote, the great mastermind, then showed the people how to get it out. He taught them how to rub two dry sticks together, how to use a fire drill, releasing the warmth that Frog had saved. And so, humanity had fire. They had warmth, they had cooked food, they had light to push back the darkness. But it wasn't a gift born of love. It was the byproduct of a thief's ambition. Coyote didn't set out to save the world. He set out to warm his own paws. This is a critical distinction. It suggests a world where progress isn't handed down from benevolent deities, but seized, taken, and won through cunning and a healthy dose of self-preservation. It teaches that sometimes, the greatest benefits for the community can arise from the selfish desires of an individual. This theme of accidental liberation repeats itself. Take the story of salmon, a cornerstone of life for so many tribes in the Pacific Northwest. In the before time, there was a great river, but it was empty. All the salmon in the world were kept penned up, hoarded by 5 greedy swallow sisters who had built a huge dam. The people along the river were starving. And Coyote? He was hungry. He heard tales of this delicious, fatty fish and his stomach rumbled. So he journeyed to the great dam. He saw the swallow sisters guarding it jealously, allowing no one near. A direct assault was impossible. So he resorted to his favorite tool, deception. In one version, he carves a baby out of wood, places it in a basket, and floats it down the river. The swallow sisters, who longed for a child, find the basket and take the baby in. They adore him. But at night, when they are asleep, the wooden baby transforms back into Coyote. He creeps out to the dam and with all his might smashes it to pieces. The water roars through, and with it the salmon, flooding out into all the rivers and streams of the world, all the way to the ocean. He then decreed that the salmon would belong to the people, but they would only run at certain times of the year, establishing the seasons for fishing. He taught the people how to build weirs and how to cook the fish. Once again, the world is set right. The people have a sustainable source of food, a rhythm to their lives. And it all happened because Coyote wanted a good meal. He is the great disruptor of monopolies. Whether it's a monopoly on warmth held by the fire beings or a monopoly on food held by the Swallow Sisters, Coyote is the force that breaks the dam, that shatters the old order, and redistributes the wealth. He is a force of economic and social justice, but he's a terrible economist and a worse social warrior. He doesn't believe in sharing. He believes in taking. And in the process of taking for himself, he inadvertently creates a world of plenty for everyone else. His actions tell us that the world's essential gifts, fire, food, even the sun itself in some stories, are not to be taken for granted. They had to be fought for, schemed for, and stolen from powerful beings who did not want to share. The world as it exists is the result of a cosmic heist. Coyote is the ultimate anti-authoritarian figure. He sees a rule and his first instinct is to break it. He sees a boundary and he has to cross it. He sees someone hoarding power or resources, and he feels a personal guttural need to take it from them. This makes him a profoundly different kind of hero. He is not a role model of virtue but a model of effectiveness. He teaches that change doesn't come from polite requests, comes from disruption. He is the patron saint of loopholes, the master of the workaround. He gave us the tools to build civilization, not out of the goodness of his heart, but out of the emptiness of his stomach. He is the ultimate proof that sometimes, the greatest acts of creation are born from the simplest, most selfish desires. He gave us fire to warm our hands and salmon to fill our bellies. He broke the chains of the old gods and gave us the tools for survival. But with these gifts came a shadow, because the same trickster who taught us how to survive would also teach us how to sin. And sin, in these old stories, isn't about eternal damnation or a vengeful God. It's about imbalance. It's about breaking the sacred rules that hold the world together. It's about taking more than you need, wanting what you can't have, and believing your own cleverness is greater than the wisdom of the world itself. Coyote didn't invent these failings. They were always there, sleeping in the heart of creation. He just woke them up. He gave them a voice. He gave them a grinning, hungry, foolish face. And he showed us, through his own catastrophic failures, the price of listening to that voice. There's a story the Salish people tell. One autumn, Coyote was trotting along a riverbank, his stomach complaining as usual, when he looked up. Against the sharp blue of the sky, he saw a perfect V formation of geese, their calls echoing down to him. They were flying south, a journey of incredible distance and endurance. And Coyote, being Coyote, wasn't filled with awe. He was filled with envy. He didn't see the beauty of their flight. He saw something he wanted. He wanted to fly. He wanted the prestige, the power, the view from above. So he called out to them, his voice slick with false humility. "Oh, my brothers, my grandfathers, how magnificent you are! Your strength is legendary. Your wings beat with the rhythm of the seasons. I am just a poor, humble creature of the dirt. Teach me your magic. Let me fly with you." The geese, wise from their long journeys, were hesitant. Their leader called down, "This is not for you, Coyote. You have your own gifts. You have 4 strong legs to run on the earth. We have wings to travel the sky. This is the proper way. The world is in balance." But Coyote was a master of persuasion. He begged, he flattered, he whined. He promised he would be the best student, the most obedient follower. He made himself sound so pathetic, so earnest, that eventually the geese felt sorry for him. A few of the younger ones argued on his behalf. What harm could it do? We can teach him. So the leader reluctantly agreed. "Very well," he said. "We will each pluck a feather and stick it onto your fur. But you must obey our rules. When we call, you call. When we flap, you flap. And most importantly, when we are silent, you must be silent. Do not speak a single word." Coyote agreed eagerly, his heart pounding with excitement. The geese descended, and one by one, they gave him a feather. They stuck them all over his body with pine pitch until he looked like a ridiculous, lumpy bird. They placed him in the middle of their V formation, and with a great cry, they took to the air. And for a moment it was glorious. Coyote was flying. The wind rushed past his ears, the ground fell away beneath him. He could see the whole world. the winding rivers, the patchwork forests, the distant mountains. It was more incredible than he had ever imagined. He flapped his legs wildly, mimicking the wings around him, and he stayed aloft. But then the pride began to swell in his chest. He wasn't just flying. He was flying with the geese. He was one of them. No, he was better than them. They needed wings. He was doing it with pure talent and borrowed feathers. He looked down and saw the people on the ground, tiny as ants. He saw them pointing up at the strange, lumpy bird in the sky. And he couldn't resist. The most important rule, the one about silence, felt like a chain. He had to boast. He had to let them know who he was. He opened his mouth to shout, "It is I, the clever Coyote." And in that instant the magic was broken. The pine pitch lost its grip. The feathers, one by one, peeled away from his fur and scattered on the wind. The geese called out in alarm, but it was too late. Coyote was no longer flying. He was falling. The air that had held him up was now just an empty space he was plummeting through. He tumbled end over end, a ball of yelping fur, watching the hard, unforgiving ground rush up to meet him. He falls. And in his fall, a universe of lessons is born. This is the shadow side of the culture hero. The coyote who brings us fire is also the coyote who gets burned by his own ego. He teaches us about the dangers of hubris, of wanting to be something we are not. He is a walking, talking, spectacularly failing example of why balance is essential. He shows us that pretending to be a goose doesn't make you one. Wearing the feathers of others doesn't grant you their wisdom. True power comes from understanding who you are and what your place in the world is, not from envying the gifts of others. This story is a template for so many of his misadventures. Time and time again, his downfall is forged from the same three elements: insatiable appetite, blinding pride, and a complete inability to listen to good advice. His appetite isn't just for food, though he is eternally starving. It's an appetite for everything. For power, for women, for shortcuts. In many tales, he sees beautiful women and concocts elaborate, and often disgusting, schemes to trick them, only to be outsmarted and left humiliated. He is the embodiment of unchecked desire, a force that, when not tempered by wisdom, leads only to chaos and shame. He is the ultimate con artist who always ends up conning himself. In a Pima story, he challenges a tiny quail to an eating contest, confident his massive stomach will win. But the quail secretly has a hollow tube running through its body into a hole in the ground. As Coyote stuffs himself to the point of agony, the quail just keeps eating, the food passing right through it. In the end, Coyote eats so much his stomach bursts. A grotesque lesson in the perils of greed. He is outsmarted not by a great monster or a powerful spirit, but by a small bird who understands the value of cleverness over brute force. This is the coyote who teaches us how to sin, not by being a devil but by being a fool. He holds up a mirror to the worst parts of our own nature. That little voice in our head that says, "You deserve more." The one that whispers, "The rules don't apply to you." The one that sees someone else's success and feels the bitter sting of envy. That is the voice of Coyote. He is the spirit of the shortcut, the patron saint of, "I'll get away with it." And his stories exist to show us, in brutal, hilarious, and tragic detail, that you never ever get away with it. The world has its own rules. The geese have their way, the river has its way, the rock has its way. And when you try to cheat those rules, the world will, without fail, put you back in your place. So we have this impossible being, a paradox made of fur and dust. He is the selfless hero who suffers to bring light and fire to the world. He is the ultimate creator, shaping the land and teaching humanity how to live. And yet, he is also this pathetic, greedy, lecherous buffoon who falls from the sky, bursts his own stomach, and is constantly getting tricked, beaten, and left for dead. How can both be true? How can our greatest savior also be our most embarrassing failure? This is the central mystery of the trickster. He is not one or the other. He is both always. He is the chaos that makes order possible, the darkness that helps us appreciate the light. He is the walking, talking embodiment of the fact that to be human, or even a god, is to be flawed. But if he is the source of our greatest failings, the very pattern of our self-destruction, then why do we still tell his stories? Why do we gather our children, and in the flickering firelight, still speak his name? Because the stories were never truly about him. They are about us. We speak his name because we are speaking our own. We tell his tales because we are trying to understand the paradox of our own existence. Coyote is not a god on a pedestal, to be worshipped from afar. He is the messy, complicated, contradictory truth of humanity, given fur and a tail and a rascally grin. He is the mirror we are often too afraid to look into. Think about it. We build societies on rules, on order, on the idea that there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. We create laws, customs, and taboos to keep the world from descending into chaos. And then into this carefully constructed house of cards, dances Coyote. He is the embodiment of every impulse we are told to suppress. He is gluttony, lust, arrogance, laziness, and envy. He is the part of us that wants to take the easy way out, the part that sees a rule and immediately wonders what happens if you break it. And by watching him break it, we learn. We don't need a lecture on why selfishness destroys a community. We just need the story of Coyote trying to hoard all the salmon for himself, only to have them swept away by the river. We don't need a sermon on the dangers of vanity. We just need to hear about Coyote trying to steal the stars to wear as a glittering coat, only to be burned by their fire. He is our crash test dummy for morality. He runs headlong into every wall, trips into every pitfall, and gets caught in every trap so that we don't have to. The stories are a map of life's dangers, and every one of Coyote's blunders is a giant red X marking a spot we should avoid. Through his failures, we learn the shape of wisdom. But if that were all he was, a simple cautionary tale, the stories would have faded long ago. We don't just gather to laugh at a fool. We gather because Coyote is also something more. He is the chaotic spark of creation itself. In the beginning, the world was often formless or imperfect or static. The first people didn't know how to live. And who comes along to fix it? Not some perfect, all-knowing deity who snaps his fingers and makes everything right. No, it's Coyote. And he doesn't fix things elegantly. He stumbles into it. He messes it up. He fixes one problem by accidentally creating 3 more. He steals fire not out of pure altruism, but because he's cold and greedy. Yet humanity gets warmth and cooked food. He scatters the stars across the sky in a fit of pique, ruining a perfectly ordered pattern, but in doing so, he gives us the breathtaking, chaotic beauty of the night. He releases the buffalo from a subterranean prison, but only because he was hungry and wanted to eat them all himself. Yet, the people of the plains are given the source of their entire way of life. This is the profound wisdom of the Coyote cycle. Creation is not a clean, sterile process. It's messy. It's chaotic. It's born from selfish desires and happy accidents. Progress doesn't happen in a straight line. It lurches forward, driven by flawed beings with mixed motives. Coyote teaches us that the world wasn't made perfect. It was hammered into shape, stumbled upon, and tricked into existence by a being who was just as flawed as we are. He is the patron saint of unintended consequences, the god of good enough. He gives us permission to be imperfect creators in our own lives, to try things, to fail, to make a mess, and to know that sometimes the most beautiful things are born from the biggest mistakes. And perhaps most importantly, Coyote is the ultimate survivor. Look at the real-world animal. The coyote, while other predators have vanished, driven to extinction by the relentless march of human civilization, the coyote has not only survived, it has thrived. It has spread to every corner of the continent, from the deserts of the Southwest to the concrete canyons of Chicago and New York City. It is the ultimate opportunist. It adapts. It makes do. It eats what others won't, lives where others can't. It is clever, resilient, and utterly indefatigable. This is the spirit captured in the stories. Coyote is beaten, burned, flattened, drowned, and torn to pieces. And every single time, he puts himself back together. He shakes the dust off his fur, maybe picks his own eyeballs up off the ground, and trots off over the next hill, already thinking about his next meal or his next scheme. He is the embodiment of resilience. He teaches that you can lose everything, your dignity, your possessions, even your own body, and still keep going. In a world that can be harsh, unpredictable, and brutal, Coyote is the promise that it is always possible to get back up. He is the hope that life, in all its scrappy, tenacious, chaotic glory, will always find a way. This is why we still tell his stories. Because in an age of curated perfection, of social media feeds where everyone presents a flawless, idealized version of themselves, Coyote is the antidote. He is the sacred fool who reminds us that it is okay to be flawed, to be hungry, to be foolish, to be gloriously, complicatedly human. He is the chaos that balances our order, the question that challenges our answers, The greatest trick Coyote ever played was not on some ancient monster or a gullible bird. The greatest trick he ever played was on us. He made us think these thousands of stories were about him. But they are not. They are the collected wisdom, the psychological profile, the survival guide of the human race. He is the code, the key, the language we use to talk about the things we can't talk about directly. Our own foolishness, our own divinity, our own incredible, absurd, and unkillable will to live. We tell his stories in the flickering firelight to remind our children, and to remind ourselves, that the world is not a simple place of good and evil. It is a complex, shifting landscape of gray. And to navigate it, you don't just need the strength of the bear or the vision of the eagle. You need the cunning, the adaptability, the humor, and the sheer stubborn refusal to quit that belongs to the trickster. So the next time you feel you've made a terrible mistake, or acted out of pure ego, or when you see chaos erupting and new possibilities emerging from the rubble, listen closely. You might just hear, on the edge of the wind, the faint sound of a lonely howl and a laugh, and you'll know that Old Man Coyote is still out there, trotting along just ahead of us, forever making the world, and forever reminding us what it truly means to be alive.